Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today's virtual LinkedIn Advertising Masterclass. Today we're covering how you can use LinkedIn to enhance your lead generation strategies. I'm Cassandra Clark. I'm your moderator today. I'm joined by my incredibly brilliant colleagues, Candace Kim and Roina. We'll take a time to introduce ourselves in a few. So to level set a bit, today's class will cover some strategies and best practices for generating leads on LinkedIn. Our goal for this class is to really help you expand upon your current lead generation efforts and discover new ways that you can leverage our products and our features to drive leads for your business. We're going to be covering everything from retargeting to using LinkedIn lead gen forms, website demographics, and how to best measure your lead gen campaigns. However, before we jump into our presentation, I want to cover some housekeeping items. So first, today, the platform that we're using is called Slido. This is a visual of how it will look on your desktop. You'll see this box highlighted on the right of your screen. Here's where you can ask the presenters any questions you may have. You can also upvote anybody else's questions. If somebody asks a question that you really want to hear more about too, you can upvote it, and then we will take time to answer the most popular questions. We will also be asking you guys polls throughout the presentation, so you can use that same box on your right. When a poll goes live, that's where you will answer the polls. Next, because everybody always likes to have their hands on the slides, we've included them today so you can download them to your desktop, share with your colleagues. They're located on the left-hand side in the agenda box. Few more. So it's a 2-hour session, and we realize that's long, so we want to make sure we give you guys a 5-minute break about halfway through the content, so you can get coffee, use the restroom, check your LinkedIn feed, and then we'll be back in about 5 minutes after that. There are prizes, which is always exciting. We are going to give away a Rock Your Video Package prize to our top 3 most engaged participants today. You can earn points by asking questions, answering all the poll questions throughout, and also upvoting other participants' questions. So make sure that you are tuned in the whole time, and we will give those prizes away at the end of the session. The package includes a tripod, a selfie stick, a light, and a microphone, so that way you can get to producing the high-quality videos to run in your LinkedIn video ads. And last, there will be a survey at the end. We're always looking for feedback on these sessions. We want to hear what we could do better, what you guys want to hear more about. So be sure to take a survey at the end, please. So your presenters today, like I mentioned, I'm Cassandra Clark. Like many of you guys on the line, I am a demand generation marketer here at LinkedIn. So my efforts every day go into how we can build effective lead generation strategies for the business here. I've been here about 4 years. And a game we like to play is something that's not on your LinkedIn profile. So mine is, I grew up on a sheep and cattle farm, and we sold beef most of my life in my family. And then one day I decided I really don't like beef or meat at all. So I became a vegetarian, and now, no pun intended, but I'm pretty much a black sheep of my family because nobody understands why I don't eat meat. And now I'll pass it off to Candace.
Awesome, thanks, Cass. Hi, everyone. I'm Candace Kim. I'm a product marketing manager here at LinkedIn. I've been here for about 5 years now. So in dog years, it's 35 years, so quite a bit. I am an avid hot dog eater, so unlike Cass. But a fun fact about me is I love animals. So I actually volunteer at the SPCA just so I can play with puppies. And this past Christmas, I had the opportunity to go on safari in South Africa, and I got to pet a cheetah, which is like top 5 moments of my life. So fun fact.
Amazing.
And Roina.
Thanks, Candace. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Roina Sharifi, and I'm a Client Solutions Manager here at LinkedIn. I've been at LinkedIn for about 4 years, and throughout the years, I've been partnering with marketers just like yourself to make your campaigns more successful on LinkedIn. Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile, I think that would have to be that I actually met the Pope. Definitely can ask me some more questions about that, but it was definitely a highlight so far. So we're going to kick it off with a quick poll question to ask about you in terms of what city you're joining us from today.
Yeah, and we just want to get to know you guys better. So want to know where everybody's tuning in across the globe. Portland, DC,
Great.
Milwaukee, Arlington, Virginia,
London,
Toronto.
Candace used to live in London, right?
I did. It's a global group of folks.
Denmark. So we have Europe represented. That's awesome.
Arlington, Virginia, coming in representing strong. Nice job.
I know. Indy, go Hoosiers.
All right. Well, it's awesome to have all of you guys on the line today, all over the United States and the world. We really appreciate you guys joining. So now I'll kick it off to Raina, who's going to give you an overview of the agenda and then kick off the presentation.
Thanks, Cass. So we have quite a bit to cover in today's session, and we're definitely going to get started right away. So in today's session, we're going to be covering lead gen strategies. Then we're going to talk about implementing lead gen forms. We'll dive into a quick break to help you replenish and get that coffee that you probably need at this point in time. Measurement and optimization is going to be following right after the break, followed by a conclusion that will put it all together for you and include some key takeaways. And of course, there'll be Q&A at the end to conclude today's session. Before I jump into talking about strategies or lead gen strategies in particular, I want to take a step back and really think about your guys' challenges, right? I mean, having worked with marketers across the years, one of the biggest challenges that I've always come across when I asked them what those were generating leads, or more importantly, quality leads and showcasing ROI. This is very much in line with research done by Demandwave in 2017. In fact, when marketers were asked about the biggest challenges they're currently facing, delivering quality leads and proving ROI was actually something that majority of respondents agreed with. In fact, 56%. Generating enough leads and creating the right type of content were kind of coming along in second and third place. So talking about content, it's incredibly important when you think about lead generation to think about content, because if you don't have any content, where can you capture leads from? I want you guys to think about the content that you're promoting in correspondence to where your prospects are in the buyer's journey as it pertains to the marketing funnel. I know you guys are very well familiar with the marketing funnel, but I want you to really take a step back and dissect your content at each step. Here's a quick example that we'll walk through, focused on a mortgage company. So on the left side, we'll walk through the different mindsets that your audience is in based on where they are in the buyer's journey and what kind of content you can create in order to address those audiences in an effective manner. So let's get started. In the awareness stage, you'll likely have someone who has a dream of owning a home, but is unsure whether it's the right time to do so. In that case, you can create content such as top 10 mistakes newlyweds make, or create an infographic that elaborates whether one should rent or buy. As people are moving down the consideration stage and maybe do some more research, they might be in a mindset that corresponds with the following. They want to buy a home, but they're unsure what to look for in a mortgage. Here's where you can address that audience very effectively by creating a blog post that focuses on how to tell a good mortgage from a bad one, or promoting video content that elaborates the differences between a 15 and 30-year mortgage and what to consider. Lastly, as you have members that are ready to buy a home, probably spent countless weekends at open houses and have found the dream home, they might be ready to shop for a mortgage. So they might be ready to become a converted lead for you. In this scenario, you really want to address them with what they would be most interested in, which could be a mortgage calculator or an online brochure or a consult offer to really help them in that stage of the process. With all of these examples, you do see that the content that you're serving aligns perfectly with what your audience's mindset is. And that's what I want you guys to think about when you think about creating any type of content, whether for lead generation or awareness purposes. Another really important thing to keep in mind, even though today's session is focused on lead generation, which of course inherently begs the question that we're going to be focusing on gated content, I want you to not forget the importance of ungated content in this. For instance, when we've done research, we found that when you are gating content exclusively, you're actually less likely to be considered by vendors. For instance, 75% of tech buyers said that they're actually less likely to consider a vendor if you gate all of your content. Similarly, if you gate the first piece of content, 37% of tech buyers are less likely to consider you. So the key takeaway really here is to have a healthy balance between gated and ungated content. This is specifically important because when buyers are starting the research and consideration process, and before they ever reach out to a salesperson, they've already consumed a ton of content, but they might not be willing to give you their information right away.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in here because this is actually, I think it's a hot topic with lead gen marketers. I think it's our gut reaction to want to put a form, AKA gate everything. But I think increasingly we're realizing that content consumption is key, and people, especially nowadays, like to protect their data, so they're not really willing to just fill out forms. So I like to take what I call like a 70-30 approach. So 70% of our content is gated with a form before they can access it, but we do 30% completely ungated that they can access. I've also heard people do like a 60-40 or even a 50-50. I mean, it's really kind of what works for you. And then what we found works particularly well on LinkedIn is, we have a blog, and the blog team is consistently putting out amazing content. Mm-hmm. So I'll just go to them and be like, what are your top performing blog posts for the last, few months? And then I'll repurpose that into a, newsfeed ad as sort of our top of the funnel thought leadership strategy, like you were talking about. And those are always like have a ton of engagement, usually have our highest click-through rates. So it's a balance, and I definitely, like I said, we take the 70-30 approach here, where 30% of our content that we run paid behind is ungated.
I think to add to that and to make it more real, a lot of our LinkedIn reps use this analogy, which I love. If you're walking into a bar to meet a potential new date, you're not asking them right away, how many kids do you want? What's your favorite color? Where do you want to end up? You got to warm them up a bit. So take that similar approach with your demand gen marketing strategies. You want to make sure that your prospects trust you. And one obviously big way to do that is through content.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about content and specifically focus on top of funnel or thought leadership content. Again, I know lead generation, so our eyes are on the bottom of the marketing funnel, but let's not forget the importance of top of funnel content when it comes to actually moving the needle at the bottom of the funnel. When we've done research here at LinkedIn and collaborating with the Edelman team, we've seen time and time again that respondents to our survey have said that the thought leadership content actually helped them in the decision-making process when it came down to ultimately choosing a vendor. Similarly, people who create the thought leadership content have agreed that it does help close the deal and or win the business as a whole. So where does LinkedIn fit into all of this? Well, LinkedIn allows you to target these audiences regardless of where they are in the buyer's journey through a wide array of targeting filters, which we'll discuss in this session. We'll also allow you to convert these prospects into known leads through a wide array of tools, which we'll also cover. And lastly, going back to one of the challenges we mentioned earlier around ROI, we help you measure, which is going to be more and more important for you as you're trying to measure the true ROI of your campaigns. And we have a lot of great tools to help you achieve that.
Questions. All right, we already have a ton of questions, which is exciting. Let me just skim. So our top voted question, I don't think we'll answer right now because Candace is actually going to do a deep dive, but it's around my biggest challenge is creating the right strategy for a specific purpose. And there are so many types of LinkedIn ads that you can use. What should I be choosing? So the good thing is we're going to cover targeting first, and then Candace is going to do a deep dive into all the different ad products. So we will get there. The next question is, what kind of content performs best on LinkedIn?
Ooh,
it's a
$1 million question.
Yes. But it is our second most popular question right now. So I think, give your own perspective. You work a lot with our clients. What do you see?
I think the most successful content that I see perform really well on LinkedIn, ultimately going back to the point earlier around audience mindset and content alignment, is really that. For instance, content that is really tailored to your target audience and speaks directly to them tends to be the most successful. So if, for instance, you're targeting an IT or very technical audience and you have content that's addressing challenges or current timely challenges in the marketplace, those tend to perform really well because they address some of the challenges. One other important thing is, and not something we oftentimes forget, is that we put our own self-promotion in front of the actual value that we provide. So when you think about content on LinkedIn, think about providing value to the people that you're targeting first. So what is in it for them, right? Like if they were to be interested in your targeting, or sorry, in your content, why should they care? And that kind of answering that question will lead you to the right path.
Yeah. I think to add to that, it's important to put yourself in the reader's mindset. And at the end of the day, they're humans too, right? So think of yourself like you don't want to read just, theories or, about product demos. We think of it as a diet here at LinkedIn, right? So for example, you need your vegetables, you need your cereal. So those are important, big rock content pieces. But at the same time, you need a little dessert. So, have fun with your content, get a little cheeky. CMOs like to laugh just as much as you and I. So just remember, it's a balance, and, creating that content strategy and content calendar will be key to your success.
And we also do a whole advertising masterclass on content marketing too that is recorded, and we can include it in the assets. So on that same thread, what kind of content do you recommend gating? Also a bit of $1 million question. It'll be different for everybody, but would love to hear your perspective.
I think some of the most common things that I see marketers gate, which tend to make sense in my opinion, are white papers that are really heavy, right? Or ebooks that include lots of different pieces of content. Like, for instance, I would never gate a blog post or an infographic. I think those are too lightweight pieces of content that people are not going to be incentivized enough to submit their information. So again, think about that value prop, right? Like, would you convert on this? Would this be valuable enough for you to volunteer your information? And so the answer, it really depends on the kind of the value that your content provides. But again, the bigger your content as far as volume and length, the more likely you are to gate it and the more value it likely provides to your audience.
Cass, from your experience, what type of content do we usually gate?
I would align with what you said, like really meaty ebooks or like research papers, but we're actually moving more and more to ungating a lot. Unless it's a really dense research paper, we're really trying not to gate a lot of content and only gating like contact sales call to actions or free demo call to actions or promo code call to actions. So those really like nitty gritty bottom funnel campaigns that we run. And then really we're working more and more to ungate a lot of our content. We just want to be more like customer first, where we can give customers what they're researching for when they want it, as opposed to sort of blocking them for it. So it's a new strategy we're trying out. We're still figuring out measurement and all that fun stuff that goes with it. But it's been interesting to see how kind of like content gating has evolved.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that's a great question, by the way, what type of content do you gate? But I think another appropriate question is when to gate content, right? And so that's kind of what you and Roy and I are going after, is like, when is the right time to gate content? And I think that's where you have to think about the funnel and make sure that they're warmed up and they're educated enough to make the decision of giving them your information.
Yep, also very key.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of questions here, but a lot of them are related to the next two sections on targeting and products. So I want to hurry up and jump into that so you guys can get some answers.
Awesome, thanks, Cass. So let's talk about targeting strategies and how to best target on LinkedIn. It's probably one of the questions I get every single time I jump on a call with a prospect and or current client is, how do I reach my target audience? So for those of you who have logged into LinkedIn's Campaign Manager, this screen might look very familiar. And for those who haven't, you might just be really impressed by all the different filters we have available for you to target. Now, one important key takeaway or kind of advice I want to pass on here is that even though we have every single layer available, it doesn't always make sense to select every single layer, because you'll be ending up with an audience of about 3 members on LinkedIn, and that's probably not going to be really effective. So what I want you to think about when you think about targeting on LinkedIn is, number one, align it with your lead scoring model. For instance, if you're defining quality leads in your marketing automation system to be leads of a certain company size, industry, function, and/or seniority, then it probably makes sense to overlay all of those different targeting filters so you can get as close as possible to that quality lead that you're hoping to drive into your marketing automation system. If you're unsure about that or still in the process of determining what a quality lead really looks like and trying to gather that data, start off a little bit broader and optimize from there. Talking about kind of a broad mentality here, I want you guys to think about LinkedIn targeting the similar way you approach a Venn diagram. Here's a quick example to illustrate. Let's pretend you're trying to reach an IT decision maker, or like in this case, a CTO, right? A Chief Technology Officer. One of the most common ways that people will go about this is the most obvious, which is targeting job titles, right? You are going to target Chief Technology Officer. However, when you only focus on the title targeting, you're leaving out a big share of the pie. And you're also not able to really increase your share of voice and or an A/B test to see what audiences engage the most on LinkedIn. So in the example of the CTO audience, you can actually reach that same audience through a wide array of different targeting options. In this scenario, title is one way, job function and seniority is another. Similarly, you can target skills and overlay the seniority filter to hone in on that CTO audience. And also, let's not forget about groups. That's probably one of the most engaged audience that you can target on LinkedIn. Why? Well, it's obvious. People who are in groups, they've self-selected to be in those groups. And so they're always engaged and they're always looking for ways to improve upon themselves and are probably more receptive to your content than other people are. So don't forget about all those different ways in order to really expand your audience and truly A/B test so you can shift your budget where the audiences are performing best. We just covered off our demographic targeting capabilities on a high level, but what I want you guys to also keep in mind is that on top of the demographic LinkedIn first-party targeting that we have available, you can also overlay additional targeting filters, such as website retargeting, email contact targeting, or account targeting. Those three targeting filters are part of our matched audiences offering, which we'll cover later on. But again, a great way to really hone in on the audiences that matter most to you. The key differentiator here is the ability to overlay LinkedIn first-party data to really reach the audiences that matter the most. Data integrations and in combining those with our LinkedIn data set is another effective way to reach your target audiences. Data integrations currently include partners such as Eloqua or Marketo, which are marketing automation providers, or others like LiveRamp or Acxiom. Again, we'll cover some more about those in the later section. So we just talked a little bit about website retargeting and exploring that as an avenue for targeting purposes, and one that's obviously going to be very effective for lead generation purposes. One of the most important things is that you place our insight tag in order to be able to do that. The great thing about our insight tag is that it's a lightweight piece of JavaScript code that ideally you'll put in the global footer on your page so that it fires across all subsequent pages. The great benefit to the insight tag is not just that you can retarget people, but in addition, you are able to track conversions and leverage our auto optimization feature, which will make your life much more easier. Trust me, you'll definitely do less manual updating of bids, etc. And website demographics. So this is really key to understanding the type of audiences that are coming to your site based on LinkedIn first-party data and can be incredibly valuable to help you inform your targeting strategies. Now, talking about matched audiences in a little bit more detail. Again, our matched audiences feature essentially includes these three different targeting capabilities. Website retargeting, which I'm sure many of your demand gen marketers on the meeting here have tested out, and it's probably going to be your most effective channel. You have the ability to engage website visitors when they're back on LinkedIn, and that's the key differentiator is the context that you're reaching them in on LinkedIn.com. You can also leverage email contact targeting by connecting your marketing automation system to import your email lists over and really engage the contacts that you already know. This helps you align your messaging accordingly because you're probably going to message people that are already in your database a little bit differently than you are people who might have never heard about you or your brand. Account targeting. I know account-based marketing is like the hot thing out there. It's like a new, trend, I'd like to say. And so oftentimes people try to test it out, but they don't really know how to go about creating that list. And I think the biggest opportunity here is alignment or creating alignment with your sales teams. And we'll cover a little bit more around that. But before I do all of that, I'd love to know how you could use your matched audiences or how you could use matched audiences to convert prospects to leads.
And maybe you're already doing it today, and we'd love to hear how you're doing it, or if you were to use website retargeting or account-based marketing, how would you use it? How would you pair content? This is a free response. We'd just love to hear from you guys and learn from the audience. All right, so somebody said upload their email contact lists. Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel like you could use this or like the marketing automation integration in a lot of ways. I've seen people use the contact targeting as a way to people who haven't responded or opened emails to try to nurture them on LinkedIn or even exclude them.
I mean, I do like the fact that someone says that they don't know because we're actually going to be covering that off in the next section because I know there's a lot of different ways to go about this.
Make sure your content is the most relevant to these audiences. Yep. I want to touch on that. I'm seeing a lot of, and this is my fault, I apologize, a lot of people coming in confused about the ungating content that we're doing. So I'm going to elaborate that on the next slide when we talk about use cases. Use a landing page to have prospects download a case study. Yep. Reach a, but not my, yeah, I like that. Oh, these are moving fast.
Yeah.
I know.
You guys got some great ideas for sure.
Yep. I like building content where they are in the funnel. Customer retention, that's a big thing that we're exploring now is getting, building out the customer life cycle and being more sophisticated about that on LinkedIn. Okay, thank you guys for your answers.
Awesome. So let's dive in. For those of you who are still wondering or maybe looking for additional inspiration on how to use matched audiences, let's walk through a couple of examples. Let's start with website retargeting. One great way you can really think about your retargeting strategy and making it a little bit more sophisticated is, again, by slicing and dicing your retargeting audience. So don't just focus on retargeting just anybody that comes to your site with the same kind of content, but really customize it. For instance, people who are visiting your pricing page have given you different signals than someone who just visited your homepage and bounced. So similarly, you want to target them with content that aligns with that. So in this scenario, I would recommend something like retargeting people who visited your pricing page with a 30-day trial. So again, aligns perfectly, right? Content and where they are in the buyer's journey. Similarly, people who visited your product page and are interested in a specific product, you can retarget them with a piece of content that's focused on a case study involving that same product. From an email contact targeting perspective, you can upload an email list of people who have not engaged with you in the last 180 days or however many days you set that requirement to be. This is a great way for you to engage people who have kind of gone dormant on you or have not been as responsive and try to re-engage them and get them back into your funnel. Or you can upload a list of current customers to exclude them from your efforts or message them differently, because current customers would probably want to be talked to differently than your prospects. Similarly, on the account targeting side, again, talking about account-based marketing, it's a great opportunity to create greater alignment with your sales team. So for instance, take a moment, sit down with your sales team if your time allows, and understand what kind of companies they are focusing on breaking into, and target those same companies through your advertising efforts. In doing so, your salespeople will likely be reaching out to people who have already been introduced to your brand before they made the first call. Similarly, you can also target a list of current customers, which can be really beneficial when your sales teams are about to renew that person. And so again, staying top of mind with both your current customers, prospects, and or people at the mark of renewal is going to be increasingly important to grow your business.
So yeah, and I just want to touch base because I saw a lot of questions come through when I mentioned that we're moving towards an ungated content strategy. So we're not completely ungating everything, and I think we're just trying to be smarter about sequencing the funnel. So if they are truly top of funnel, where they're not a known audience, so they wouldn't really fall into any of these like 3 buckets, that's where we're really focused on ungating. If they're like true prospects and they haven't engaged with us first, because we just want to nurture and build that relationship. And then as they start to engage with us on certain website pages, or we think that they're a marketing qualified lead or employee in one of our target accounts, that's where we're like honing in on our lead gen strategies. And that might be more focused in like get a 30-day free trial, or here is talk to an account strategist when we feel that they're much more warm, if that makes sense. So we're still generating leads, and that's still important. We're just trying to map the funnel and make sure that we're generating quality leads that are ready to talk to our sales team.
Yeah, but I think, Cass, you made a great point. It goes back to something we mentioned earlier around creating that alignment with where your audiences are, right? Mm-hmm. And what kind of content you're serving to them, whether that is gated or ungated. Awesome. So I want to also talk you guys through a case study to show some examples of some success that advertisers have seen on the LinkedIn platform. In this particular example, Tableau Software, a company that's been running advertising on LinkedIn for many years, has started to test out our matched audiences feature, particularly the website retargeting feature. And in doing so, they were able to see much more success than by just running a traditional demographic targeting sponsored content campaign alone. In fact, they were able to see 6 times better costs per conversion when they used website retargeting, and the conversion rates were also much higher, in fact 4% higher than when they were just running traditional sponsored content, which did not include retargeting. So again, the key takeaway here is keep all of our targeting filters in mind, but also try to combine an A/B test. And particularly when it comes to matched audiences and your lead generation efforts, complement your retargeting strategy with a reach strategy that's targeting net new people to keep driving them to your site or your content in order to continuously fill that pipeline and the velocity in your marketing funnel.
I think we have questions now. Yes. So one question that I saw come in a few times, not surprisingly, and one of them got voted up to the top is, I love how LinkedIn allows us to add so many filters for our target audience, but is it better to go after the masses, 1 million, or be more concise with the target audience? And I know this is a question we talk about internally. It kind of goes back to that Venn diagram. Do you want to
Yeah. So I'm not going to say go broad or go home. That's not the key takeaway here. I think it ultimately aligns with what type of content you have available. So I understand that not in all cases you'll have all types of content available based on, all kinds of audiences. You might have a piece of content that could speak to a broader audience. In that case, it makes sense to start with a broader targeting and review our campaign insights and demographics and start optimizing from there. We'll dive into our campaign optimization tools later on, but just to give you a sneak peek, for instance, in this scenario, you could start off by targeting people who are in the IT job function, which will create an audience that's pretty broad. And you'll probably get a lot of traction as far as your delivery goes, but you can actually then go into our click demographics report and understand what audiences are ultimately clicking on your ad. And if you then see that it's certain seniorities or certain company sizes, you can then start overlaying that as a filter, because that then corresponds with some of the learnings you've made in your campaign.
Mm-hmm. I think to add to that, it's always important to just test it. So this is something that we get all the time. LinkedIn targeting is actually very powerful. So in many cases, I actually get emails saying, I didn't know I was going after that. But like I said, it's a key differentiator compared to a lot of other platforms out there. We have a lot of data on the back end. So go broad, see what works, and then hone in on that. For example, seniorities. A lot of people, of course, put that on their profiles, but a CMO here and a marketing director here mean very different things at different companies. So again, if you start at the function level or at the groups level, for example, you can see, what's actually out there.
Yeah. Another important thing, if you're shying away from too broad targeting because you just simply think it's too big of an audience, try to think about the importance that a committee makes when it comes to purchasing decisions, right? So if you're ultimately trying to sell something to your end customer, there's probably going to be more than just that one person involved in the decision-making process. And that's why it's important to potentially start broader, reach those influencers so you can kind of walk down the chain of command and ultimately have influences at all steps along the way.
It's a great point, Marina.
Yeah, not to get too in the weeds there, but I think a lot of people are, very targeted on just generating that lead from the decision maker. So they think director and above, but you'd be surprised at how many of the practitioners, the individual contributors are actually the ones bringing technology to the table or services to the table because they're doing the work. So, don't forget about them and nurturing them because they really do have more influence than you think they do. More questions. I know we have a lot about targeting, so I want to address those now. So one is, how can you use match audiences to convert your prospects to leads? I think we talked a little bit about that. I think my favorite and most powerful in my campaigns has certainly been retargeting. You have to download or install the Insight tag on your website, but once you have that has really unlocked a lot of lead generation capabilities for me once I implemented retargeting on LinkedIn.
Yeah, another great way to take that a step further to provide an example is that you can start by driving people to your site through a demographic targeting, right? So let's say you're targeting, again, I hate to keep going back to the IT, but that's kind of always comes to mind here. Let's say you're driving IT people to your site. You can then retarget people who visited the landing page and bounced and didn't convert in a retargeting campaign. So then that way you can effectively nurture them to the point of conversion.
I actually see a question here that is really interesting. So Jennifer Adams asked, is there a way to exclude people from certain companies from seeing the ad? And the answer is absolutely. And this was something I was going to touch on actually. Just as inclusion, exclusions is just as important. So if someone is already converted and you know that, and you have a piece of information, whether through be an account list or an email, upload those and you can actually exclude them in the matched audiences feature.
I have another question. What is the minimum list size you recommend for match audience? That's a very good question.
So when you're thinking about uploading an account list, the minimum requirement, is it
300.
300, right? Any kind of minimum requirement for running any campaign on LinkedIn is that it has to yield an audience size of at least 300 members. So that's kind of the bare minimum that you want to get started with as a requirement that's set in the platform that you cannot circumvent.
And I would always say add a little more because we do match it on the back end. So for those that have really clean data, you'll probably have a higher match rate, which is great. For folks that are still testing or you're figuring out where your lead information is coming from, your match rate may be lower. So just see what you get when you upload your lists into LinkedIn.
Awesome. there's a question that I might answer first because I feel passionately about this,
Sure.
but is it better to target your audience via job title or job function, and what's the difference? I know you probably have a lot of perspective working from clients. I mean, my strongest answer is test, A/B test. We did a lot of A/B testing on this when I first started running LinkedIn ad campaigns, and for us, we found that job function gave us more reach without like a lot of drop off in quality conversion. So we use job function, but I mean, I definitely recommend test because every audience is different and every objective is different. What do you usually see with your clients?
I think reach is important to note as it correlates to efficiencies and cost, right? So in the example of function versus title, you're probably going to generate a much smaller audience when you're targeting by titles. In effect, like as a result, your cost per click that's suggested in the tool is going to be higher than it is for a broader audience. So specifically, if you are very frugal in terms of really wanting to stay within a certain cost per click range and or backing into a cost per lead that you want to achieve and kind of doing all that back end math, you want to kind of keep that in mind too, where it makes sense to start off with the function from an efficiency standpoint.
Awesome. So I see some questions around GDPR, which is the new EU mandate around members' privacy. So are there any implications for GDPR around using the insight tag? Do you happen to know?
So in all of I'll answer this a few ways. So the insight tag is completely fine. It's the way you collect the data actually on the first, right? So folks have to opt into these emails or opt into giving you your information. So it actually starts at the lead collection process. With LinkedIn products, we actually have privacy policies, and for certain features, we even have an opt-in feature. So for lead gen forms, which we'll discuss a little later, it's a feature where you can actually collect lead information directly on LinkedIn, and you have to opt in order to give that information. For certain regions like EMEA, Europe, I know it's a bit tougher, and so we work very closely with our legal team to ensure everything is legally compliant, in which case it is.
Yeah. And another thing to note, the insight tag will not collect any personally identifiable data at any point in time, and that's where GDPR gets a little complicated or gets in the way. And so just by sheer nature of that, because we're not collecting any personally identifiable data, you should be good there.
And actually, I just want to level set, and then we're going to kick it off to Candace to deep dive into our products. A lot of questions around like gated content and what that is, and I know it's a bit like lead gen jargony, so we'll level set here. Gated content is really if you're just having you have a landing page with a form asking for their first name, last name, email address before they can actually access your content. So it's kind of what we call like putting a gate in front of your ebook or your white paper. There's a question around can you still gate content with GDPR? To Candace's answer, it's really your privacy policy and what legal, work with your legal team to figure that out on your end.
Great.
Okay, so now Candace.
Wonderful.
And I see a lot of questions in here already for Candace for the section that she's going to talk about. So we will address those questions after this section.
Great. So Roina, thank you so much for providing a lot of that strategy and the theory behind, why we do content marketing here at LinkedIn. So in this next section, I'll walk us through our 4 flagship products, and I'll explain the basics of what each product does and how you can use it to generate leads for your objective. In addition, we have some case studies in here provided actually by our very own Cass. So like she mentioned at the beginning of the call, she's our demand gen marketer. So she actually uses our own products to market LinkedIn. So it's eating our own dog food, so we'll be able to give you some insights there.
I like to say drinking our own champagne.
Oh, I like that.
It's better than dog food.
Dog food? Animal lover right over here. So let's jump right in. Out of our 4 flagship products, our biggest one is sponsored content. So sponsored content is native advertising in the LinkedIn feed. So when you guys go into linkedin.com, it's the first page you see. So you see profile information on the left, you have your right-hand rail, but really the bread and butter is the content you see there inside in the middle rail. Folks come to LinkedIn now not only just to find jobs, so that's a friendly reminder I like to tell folks. People are here to learn more about their industries, to gain skills, to connect with other professionals in the network. So our LinkedIn feed is actually very active. So as a marketer, you can put in, content, images to get folks to convert within the homepage itself. Sponsored content is delivered both on desktop and mobile, and that's why it's considered one of our more versatile products. Something else to know is that sponsored content is actually a family of ads. So under it, we have various formats, and in the last year, we've actually launched quite a few formats under the sponsored content family. So one of them includes video ads. So this has been a huge ask the last couple of years, and we were so excited to finally release this. So with video ads, marketers can now upload their videos to Campaign Manager or their LinkedIn company page and sponsor it within the LinkedIn the LinkedIn homepage. So in the feed now, you'll see a lot more videos, and even as a member yourself, you can upload your own videos to engage your audience. Another format we just released earlier this year, actually, I think it was only 2 months ago, is carousel ads. So carousel ads, again, is sponsored content, but the main difference here is you'll actually see a scroll button. So as a member, you can actually click on these arrows and see various images. And as a marketer, you can really tell your story. I know a lot of folks are probably thinking, this is a brand awareness play. It doesn't really, it doesn't apply to me, but I actually disagree. As a B2B marketer and as a demand gen marketer, you can actually explain a story. So going back to Roina's point about content strategy, you have to build out that story and explain to prospects why your product or why your event is important. And so here you can tell a story about your product. You can even, I've seen really creative solutions. I've seen demand gen marketers actually show images of how to use their product within these, carousel ads. So Cass actually launched our own carousel ad when we launched sponsored content, and so I'll kind of kick it over to her to explain why this was so successful.
Yeah, in general, we're just seeing a lot of success with carousel ads, so we're trying to use them more and more. Overall, always A/B tests, but we're seeing a lot higher engagement with the carousel ads than our static sponsored content. So I like this example because this is Once Upon a Digital Time. It's talking about stories and how to tell better stories to your audience. And so I think that carousel ads also allows you to tell a better story. So it's almost like Inception. It's an ebook about telling better stories using carousel ads to kind of bring to life what that story is about. And this is a piece that we do with Brian Solis every year. And it's a great piece. If you see it, I recommend reading it. And it's, of course, one of our highest engaging campaigns. It's got the highest click-through rate across our sponsored content campaigns. So if you're not testing sponsored content or carousel ads for sponsored content, I highly recommend, because we're seeing a lot of success with it so far.
Great. Thanks, Cass. So I thought you made a really good point there. Always A/B test all these different formats. You may find that certain audience respond well to certain formats, whereas others, respond better to video, for example. I do want to mention we also have something called direct sponsor content. So what you can do is actually post your sponsor content to your prospect's homepage only and not your company page. So this is a great way to test out different pieces of content to see who responds well and then fine-tune your campaigns. All right, moving on. So sponsored InMail is another flagship product. I don't know if we have any parents out there in the audience, but I know you're not supposed to say you have a favorite child. I have a favorite child, and that is my sponsored InMail product. So to give you some insight into what this is, so messaging, we know, is very hot in the industry right now. I think marketers are still trying to figure out how to use it, but I like to think of sponsored InMail as a way to message your prospects. So as a marketer, you can send a personalized message to your prospects. These messages are delivered to the LinkedIn Messaging Center, and they're actually only delivered when the member logs in. So that means that you have mindshare. It's an uncluttered inbox, and it's almost guaranteed to be opened up. It's also mobile friendly. So for example, I know a lot of folks are on the go and they open up their LinkedIn messaging app. You always see a call to action button there. And so it's really easy to take action when you send that message. Quick technical note, so we have a 45-day frequency cap for sponsored InMails. So what that means is a member can only receive a sponsored email every 45 days. So when you're sending this to your prospects, you know that you have the entire share of voice. And so I think that's why this makes sponsored email a really powerful product.
And I just want to call out, because there's a question in here about the frequency for sponsored email being 60 days. It used to be 60 days, so to clarify, it's now 45 days.
That's correct. We ramped this recently, actually in the last month. So this just allows marketers to actually reach folks. And obviously, as the product team, we make sure that the opt-out rates are still healthy, and they still are. People actually love receiving these messages.
Yeah. And to talk about that frequency cap in terms of what that really means to you as a marketer, I want to really reinforce the fact that for those 45 days, you own 100% share of voice against that member's inbox. That means that nobody else can message that member in their inbox, which is a really effective environment. And so think about this as a great way to try to stay in front of your audiences, for instance, when you're promoting an event and you don't want your competitors to steal your thunder.
Sorry. So to jump into some real life examples, this is one that Cass ran recently. So here at LinkedIn, we segment out our audiences. So for example, this audience in this campaign visited our LinkedIn pricing page. So we know that they're highly warm, they're interested in our products. And so what Cass did was she retargeted these folks with a $50 coupon to encourage them to actually take that next step in converting on our website. So it's a great multi-product approach. I think earlier Roina talked about our matched audiences feature set. I love recommending that marketers actually run a sponsored content campaign, gather folks who are interested, and then retarget those folks with a sponsored email. So taking that multi-product approach is highly effective on our platform. We also ran another one that I'll pass over to Cass, but something to remember is, you are reaching those high-level executives, and so that's why sponsored email is a great way to reach maybe more of those niche audiences or folks that are harder to get to open up your email. So I'll pass it over to Cass real quick to explain this campaign.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite case studies to talk about, and I've actually seen this time and time again. When we have a campaign objective that's targeted to very senior level executives, VP and above, and we've done executive events, executive webinars, and then this is an executive guide. You can see the CMO guide to LinkedIn. So we ran an email campaign targeting VP and above, and then we also, just CXOs. This was just CXOs. And then we also ran an in-mail targeting just the CXO level on, the CMO guide to LinkedIn. And we find that when we are emailing executives, we have a really hard time with open rates. I've seen as low as a 10% open rate when we try to engage with executives over email. I think, they have busy days, their inbox is probably cluttered, and it's just really hard for us to engage them with a marketing email. However, when we go to sponsored in-mail, we've seen open rates at 50%, and this one in particular was a 67% open rate. To me, I think that's pretty crazy, meaning that almost 7 out of 10 CXOs we targeted opened this email. And it had a 5 times higher CTR than our email campaign targeting the same audience with the same content, and the message was almost identical. So it's just a call out that this is a really powerful tool. And the other great thing about this is it only sends when they're actually engaged on LinkedIn. So with emails, you have to worry about old email addresses, bounce backs, and so on. But here you're reaching an actually engaged person. So I think that's also why we see so much success. As a fellow demand gen marketer, it's not that we're replacing email with sponsored email. Certainly email is still a very strong channel for us, but it's just another way that we can drive engagement and of course have a multi-channel approach. And we see a lot of success here with sponsored email.
I think one other topic, I get a lot of emails from our marketers asking, sponsored email seems like a lot of work, especially compared to things like sponsored content. One thing to remember is actually it's just taking it one step further. You already create an intro text, you already create description lines for sponsored content. With sponsored email, think about it as just adding a few more sentences, giving context to why this person should take that next step in the funnel.
Candace, do you want to call out the image too? Because I know a lot of
absolutely.
marketers, when they don't use sponsored email, or when they use sponsored email, they don't use that image. So do you want to talk about why it's important?
So little known fact, when you're setting up your sponsored email campaign, you actually get a 300 by 250 for free on the right rail. So as you can see in the example right here, Cass has put in a 300 by 250 on the CMO guide for folks to download. So as a marketer, when you set up these campaigns, you also get to upload an image. Now, the reason why Cass brought this up is if you don't upload an image, it's a free-for-all, meaning other folks who set up these 300 by 250 campaigns can take that ad space. So as much as you can, get that 300 by 250 and upload it to ensure you have full mind share of that space. Great call out, Cass. Thank you. Our third flagship product is LinkedIn Text Ads. I'm sure all of you guys are very familiar with this. It's really easy to get started. The image is optional. You just put 70 characters in. It can show up in various ways throughout the LinkedIn pages. So for example, in this example, you see it on the right rail in a 300 by 250. It can also show up as a 1-by-1 on the top of the home page, as well as other pages such as company pages. In terms of why this is effective as a lead gen marketer, so it is shown only on desktop. And we find that these have huge click-through rates. So as a result, if you're looking for a really efficient cost per lead, I would highly recommend starting off with text ads. Here at LinkedIn, again, we take that multi-product approach. So when Cass is running a sponsored content campaign promoting a white paper, for example, in tandem, she'll run a text ads campaign just to reinforce that message with that same audience. And finally, we have LinkedIn Dynamic Ads. So one thing to note here is when you log into Campaign Manager today, you won't be able to see Dynamic Ads just yet. We're actually in the process of launching this new ad format next month. For folks who do have a LinkedIn rep, you can get started anytime. But what these ads are their personalized 300 by 250 ads that show on LinkedIn desktop. Now, these are really special because you can actually personalize ads to the viewer themselves. So when you're setting up the campaign, you can say enable profile picture or enable first name or even things like job function and seniority. So as a viewer, when you're looking at that, you see it personalized to you. Now, as a marketer, this is great because you don't actually have to create 300,000 personalized 300 by 250s. You can do this at scale right in Campaign Manager. Something I like to say, and Cass, I've heard her say this, is we're all a bit narcissistic, right? So if you see a picture of yourself on the right rail saying envision XYZ, you're going to click on it. And so as a result, these native ads have a really healthy click-through rate and conversion rate. This is one example of how we used LinkedIn Dynamic Ads. So we have a series called Live with Marketers, and our very own Alex Rin is the host. What Cass did here is she actually put she enabled the profile picture of the viewer to be right next to Alex. As a viewer, it helps you kind of visualize, okay, I get to listen to Alex, and it encouraged them to sign up. And as you can see, the performance speaks for itself. We had a 326% lift when actually using an image of Alex rather than the company logo. It just, furthermore humanizes what they're signing up for.
Yeah, and I'll just add on, we've seen a lot of success doing this for like our events and our webinars, being able to, I think a lot of people with these ad units kind of default to just using their company logo. I know we did that for a while, and just being able to see my own face and then, the speaker and who I'm going to be engaging with on the other end, I think just adds a lot of value. And so we've seen a lot of success if you're generating leads via webinars, which I know a lot of demand gen marketers are. This has been a helpful ad unit for us. So,
in addition to that, I think Cass talks about this all the time. It's so easy to enable. So all you need is a primary text and a secondary text, and you just tell us exactly what you want to add that's personal to the ad. So you want to enable the profile picture. It's literally a checkbox. You want to enable first name. That's all you tell us, and we'll do the rest of the work.
Yeah, and for the image, you know, we didn't have to reach out to an agency or anything to create the image. I literally stole, with her permission, Alex's picture off her LinkedIn profile and, you know, uploaded it into the ad unit. So it was super easy.
Yeah. Here's another example that Cass ran. So Cass, I don't know if you want to, it's quite, I like how fun it is.
Yeah, I think, again, just reiterating, a lot of people default to just using their company logo in this ad creative unit. And I'll admit it's 100 by 100 spec. So it's really small. And like sometimes I have a hard time thinking outside the box of what to put there. And so we've tested a lot of things and worked with our agency to just have fun and create little icons. So one is how you can be an ROI superhero with LinkedIn ads. And then the other one, we created this like Read Me series. So, you know, we created a little man with the book open for our ebook. So ultimately, you know, get creative, have fun. There's a lot you can do with this ad unit that people aren't doing yet. So like she said, we're launching it self-serve in a few weeks-ish, about a month. And so it'll be exciting once you guys all have your hands on this.
Another advanced feature, so if you have your landing pages set on your websites, and an easy feature that you can enable through your LinkedIn rep or LinkedIn contact is LinkedIn autofill. So what this means is you can actually enable this button on your landing page or on your forms. And so folks can actually click that autofill with LinkedIn button, and the form will auto-populate with information from their LinkedIn profile. Because it's one click and they don't actually have to go through the form filling it out, we find that, you know, form fill rates are a lot higher when you enable this feature. A couple more features that I wanted to call out. So we have two things called LinkedIn Audience Network and Audience Expansion. Now, I want to caveat the following features are more for scale. Lead gen marketers, beware. You can dilute some of your leads. So audience expansion or audience network basically allows you to put your sponsored content or any of your sponsored content on our premium publisher sites. So that means you're not only reaching folks on the LinkedIn site, but also on our publisher sites such as Business Insider, Wall Street Journal, etc. Audience expansion, again, is on the targeting page. So what this means is if you check that box, we're going to go and look for folks that look similar to your target audience. So for example, you're targeting CTOs. We may go for other senior technology folks in that same area. So like I said, take this with a grain of salt, because if you are trying to generate very specific leads, this could dilute your leads. So use this with caution.
Yeah, and always, again, A/B test, especially with audience expansion. I would maybe recommend launching 2 campaigns, one with it and one without, and then measure, you know, the quality leads. You might get more leads with audience expansion, but you might notice that your lead to qualified lead or lead to sales accepted lead has a higher drop off. So, you know, maybe A/B test it and see what works for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great. So let's do a quick poll. Since I've already self-proclaimed sponsored email as my favorite child, I'm curious to know if you guys have used it in the past, and if so, would love to hear a little more about the use case or how you used it.
I agree, though. Sponsored email is one of my favorite, and dynamic ads. Yeah. I mean, they're all great, but I think because there's so much opportunity that's still untapped with those 2 products. Like we said, sponsored content is our bread and butter, but there's so much you can do with the other ad units as well.
Get super creative.
Absolutely. I think that the aspect of personalization is really key, right? And the opportunity to really personalize your message to your prospect is where sponsored email is really effective. So let's see what we have here.
Targeting leads from our Sales Nav accounts. That's very interesting.
Ooh, very sophisticated marketer here.
Used it for a promo code offer, yep.
Inviting people to a webinar. Mm-hmm. A lot of folks on the stream haven't used it, and that's okay. Like I said, if you're using other things like sponsored content, this is an easy way to dip into sponsored email because you already have 80% of the content needed.
Yeah, and you might have not used it because historically, as in last year, it was an offering that was only available in working with a LinkedIn rep, and now it's actually available through self-serve for a couple months now, and so that's why it's a great opportunity for you guys to test it out.
Great. I saw in the feed, I know it's going very quickly, the answers here, but someone said they loved it, and I think that's great.
We'll upvote that for sure.
Yeah. exactly. Someone actually said, I want to use it, but I don't have enough budget. So that's very interesting to me. So actually, sponsored in-mail, you're getting as efficient CPCs and all that good stuff as sponsored content. So I know for folks who have traditionally used sponsored in-mail in the past, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it was too expensive. Well, our team has actually been working to lower those price floors to be more efficient in line with our other products. So actually, your click-through rates and the performance and the CPLs are now in line with our other flagship products, such as sponsored content. So don't let the budget thing scare you or prevent you from trying it out. It'll actually get you even stronger results with certain, audiences.
Yeah, and for an email campaign, you actually are running on a cost per cent model versus a cost per click. And those ranges that the tool suggests to you for any given audience are actually pretty efficient. Generally, and again, this can vary based on your audience targeting filters, you can see a cost per cent or cost per email sent between 75 cents up to $1.50. Those have kind of been the traditional ranges we've been seeing for certain audiences.
Great. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for your responses, guys. Very helpful.
Yeah.
Cass, do we have a few minutes for questions? I know we're running.
We do. We actually have 5 minutes for questions.
Great.
And we'll jump into the break. Oh, wait. No, we're running.
We're running a little.
Yeah, we're running behind. Okay, sorry. Live television, guys. Okay, so we'll answer a few questions. You have a ton. So one of the top questions, which I think we've answered, but I just wanted to touch base on because it is popular. The biggest challenge is creating the right strategy for a specific purpose because there's so many types of LinkedIn ads. I hope that this walkthrough kind of will give you some ideas on the different ways you can use ad products for strategies. Like Candace said, I think we all kind of have our favorites internally on how to use them and then get creative too. Like I said, with dynamic ads, saw a lot of success using it for event invites, coupled with like a sponsored in-mail campaign. I think sponsored content is great because you can really use it across the funnel and across so many objectives. So. Yeah.
My piece of advice would be to try not to reinvent the wheel. A lot of times when you have creative assets for one ad format, let's say sponsored content ads, right? To Candace's point earlier, there's probably ways you can take some of that messaging and expand upon it to build that into an in-mail. Another kind of piece of advice that I give marketers that I work with when they're specifically running an in-mail campaign and they're struggling to find the right words, I always point them to their current landing pages because they already have the words, right? And so your experience for your landing page where you're explaining whatever offer or content you're promoting is probably going to be similar with what you're trying to get in front of them in an in-mail. So again, try to repurpose as much as you can, make some nuanced changes based on your target audience, but do not try to reinvent the wheel when unnecessary.
A great point, Marina. Alrighty.
Okay, so I think we're going to take some questions and then we'll go to break and then we'll do the lead-in section. So a few more questions because there's a lot here. So another one is, do hashtags have an impact on reach and sponsored posts? This is not something I'm familiar with.
So as you guys, when you're on LinkedIn, you probably noticed that there's a lot more hashtags being used on LinkedIn, and it's kind of being more and more leveraged across the platform. Currently, it's not available as a targeting filter on LinkedIn, but it is something, and Candace can probably speak to this, that we are looking into rolling out soon. So first of all, what we want to do on LinkedIn is create a members first experience and try to see if hashtags even make sense on LinkedIn, right? I mean, they're used on other platforms where it makes a lot of sense. So we try to dip our toes into the whole hashtag world and try to see if that actually helps generate conversations and engagement on LinkedIn. And what we've seen so far is that it really does. And so we are exploring the possibility of adding that as a targeting filter in the future.
Yeah, people are actually playing a lot more with it. Yeah. So if you see in the search bar, you guys can search people, you can search for company pages. Now you can actually see what hashtags are trending as well. So as a member yourself, highly encourage it. If you want to learn a little more about demand gen, for example, put it in. You'll see a bunch of articles and things come up. But to Roina's point, we haven't actually enabled it as a targeting option just yet.
Another top voted question, and I'll start with you, Roina, because you probably have a lot of experience answering this question. Any tips for optimizing LinkedIn ads? It seems that I run out of my daily budget sometimes in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Specifically, if you might have daily budgets that are on the lower side, and when I say low, I mean maybe like $100, $150, which is totally fair because you might just have those constraints that are set to you based on the budget parameters that you have. You want to keep in mind the audience size here and also the bids. So specifically, going back to the point earlier made, if you have a very broad audience, chances are you're probably going to be running out of your budget pretty quickly. So in the scenarios where you have limited budgets, I think it actually makes sense to go a little bit more against the niche audiences, the niche audiences. So the ones that are a little bit smaller that you can then penetrate more into through that limited budget.
Yeah, and we're going to cover this after the break, but I think campaign demographics is a really great tool. For me, I can kind of see like which audiences are taking up a bulk of my impressions, but maybe not clicking and not converting, and then I might just exclude them. So definitely use that, especially if you're broad, but you need to go more niche because of your budget. Use that to kind of figure out where the sweet spots are, and then fine tune your audience there as well. Sure. And we'll dive deeper into this after the break. One more question, and then we're going to go to break. What type of ads get the highest CTR? I know we kind of covered this. Would love both of your perspectives. And I can add mine.
Candace, you want to speak to that? I kind of have to think about this one because I hate to say it, but the answer really is it depends.
Yeah, that's what I was
going to say. So if you're running a sponsored content ad that's really using great creative and is also directly addressing your audience, you're probably going to generate a pretty high click-through rate. On the flip side, if you run a sponsored content ad that's, maybe has a lot of text on the image and it's just really cluttered, and your introduction text, so the text that is above the image, is really long, you're probably not going to see that high of a click-through rate. However, we do have general benchmark averages as far as click-through rates for all of our solutions, and they can vary also based on industry and advertisers, but generally speaking, I'd say like a click-through rate for InMail is between a 3 and 8% click-through rate. I think that's kind of like the current benchmark average. For sponsored content, it seems a little lower, but keep in mind that you have opportunity to drive those leads through lead gen forms and other capabilities.
Yeah.
I'm also, with sponsored content, since we've added these amazing new features like carousel ads and sponsored video, I'm seeing my average click-through rate go up over the course of like the last quarter or two. But yeah, it really depends on your audience, your content, your budget. But for me, I would say carousel ads, and then sponsored InMail, of course, has a pretty high CTR.
Yeah, I would say sponsored InMail, sponsored content, and if you're looking for those clicks just to test out messaging, for example, really lean in on the text ads. Yeah. I mean, those click-through rates are very healthy on LinkedIn. And folks, when you're on desktop, you're more prone to click through things as well. And so we see very healthy engagement there.
Okay, we are going to go to the break, let everybody, get some coffee, answer some emails. We'll be back at 41 after the hour, so make sure you tune back in, and we'll cover off the rest of our topics.
All right, see ya.
Okay, yes.
what she did. Come on, I'll give you a lift. This guy here was the cat's whiskers. The beans needs 100% genuine article. Listen up and listen fast.
LinkedIn sponsored content allows marketers to reach their audience with targeted content within the LinkedIn members feed.
What do you hear? What do you say?
This mobile-optimized native ad format allows marketers to serve upper, middle, and lower funnel content to their audience in a professional context.
That's one rap you ain't gonna beat.
Which means audiences are engaging with content in the right mindset, allowing marketers to develop trust and credibility while achieving their marketing objectives.
And that's just potatoes.
Here comes the gravy. In fact, LinkedIn sponsored content delivers a 3x higher conversion rates than other online marketing platforms.
Holy moly, that's a lot of jam for that toast. What I tell you, 100% real McCoy, see?
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that short 5-minute break. So we're ready to kick off our content again. First, we're going to talk about LinkedIn lead gen forms, because this would not be a lead generation session if we didn't discuss how to use them and best practices. And then we're going to get into measurement and optimization. So kick it off to Candace.
Great, thanks, Cass. So hi, welcome back, everyone. In this next section, we'll talk about LinkedIn lead gen forms. This is a feature that you can actually put on sponsored content and sponsored email and actually collect leads within the ad formats themselves. So it's a native way to collect leads on LinkedIn. Very exciting. So let me first explain why we created this product. So a couple years, actually not a couple, it was like a year ago, our advertisers were saying, you know, cost per leads are too high. And so we were thinking, okay, let's investigate this. So when advertisers, not just on LinkedIn, but other platforms, send folks to a landing page, especially on mobile, sometimes that landing page download can be quite long. So as a result, drop-off happens. There are other reasons why form fill rates may be lower. So for example, if you're on mobile, I know I have a little, chubby fingers. Sometimes I'll input incorrect information. I'm too lazy to correct it. And so as a result, as a marketer, you also get inaccurate lead data information. So out of those marketer challenges or challenges that our marketers face, we created something called LinkedIn Lead Gen Forms. So this is a feature that you can put on your sponsored content. So in this example, you see a sign-in CTA. So as a marketer, you put that on. When you click on that CTA button as a member, all of a sudden you'll see a lead gen form pop up within the app. And because it's hosted by LinkedIn, there's no wait time at all. The form is actually pre-filled with information from that member's profile. So for example, here you can see that my email, name, even my job function is already pre-filled. And all I have to do is click submit, and I'll see a thank you page confirming, a link to the white paper or confirming that I've signed up for an event. So this is a really quick way to generate leads directly on LinkedIn, and also to get your CPLs down. CPLs down. In terms of where do I get my lead information, you can either download them directly from Campaign Manager or set up a direct integration, and we'll go through that a little more in detail in the next few slides. So what assets do you need to begin? Like I said, you can use lead gen forms for sponsored email and sponsored content today. So you'll need to set up those ads just as normal, and then you're going to set up the lead gen form. So for the lead gen form, you have the offer headline, the detail, and that privacy policy, which is now required with GDPR, just to ensure that we are collecting information and members are consenting to giving that information. You also have a thank you page, so you can just confirm that they've submitted their details and provide that link to the white paper, the ebook, or confirming the event details. All of these are highly customizable, and so Royna is actually going to walk us through a live demo of how to set these up.
Perfect. Thanks, Candace. All right. Well, fingers crossed that all of this is going to work out, and bear with me for just a moment or two. So, yes, it worked. Great. So we're going to quickly walk through the process in which you're going to be creating lead gen forms. I'm going to start off with one option that you can explore to create them, and then walk you through the second option shortly after. So what I actually went ahead and did, and you're not able to see that right now, is on the main screen that you see when you access LinkedIn's Campaign Manager, there's a button on the top right corner, which would be right around here, saying Create Campaign. So that's what I clicked on, and that's why I'm arrived on the screen that I'm currently on. So you're going to start off by creating your campaign by giving it a campaign name. Let's say we're going to call it ebook ITDM, and I'm just going to label it LGF for short for a lead gen form, so I can clearly distinguish between a lead gen form campaign and a traditional sponsored content campaign. So then you're just going to walk through these next steps, which include that you're going to have to check that you're creating a lead gen form campaign. This is incredibly important because our system cannot yet differentiate between a traditional one or a lead gen form campaign unless you tell it to. So make sure you check this box. Otherwise, you're not going to have the option to create or append a lead gen form. Then we hit next. You select your ad format, which, going back to the whole idea of sponsored content and the family of features or ad formats we have available are listed here for you. So the traditional sponsored content ad, the carousel ads, and the video ads. We're just going to pretend that we're going to just do a traditional sponsored content ad, so like an image, text, and a link. This is, of course, loading for just a moment.
You guys are all creating sponsored content campaigns, aren't you? Slowing us down.
All right. So we're going to skip the step that it requires you to create your sponsored content because you can actually skip it and go directly to the lead gen forms. But this is where you would go in and click on that button to create your ads. So we're going to pretend like we just did that, and then you're able to see a preview of your ad. And so this is where you click the Create New Form Template button to create a new lead gen form template. These are the fields that are similar to look familiar to you based on what Candace had just shown on the previous slide. So you're going to start off with giving your lead gen form a name. This is something that's not going to be visible to the person that's targeted with the lead gen form. It's just incredibly helpful for you to distinguish which one to pick when you're appending it to an ad, because you can create multiple lead gen forms in any given campaign. So we're just going to call it ebook ITDM version 1, just so I can distinguish it. Then we're going to start off just filling out these fields as required. So we're going to insert an offer headline, which I know I'm really creative inserting an offer headline here, an offer detail. So this adds some additional color around what you're promoting. You can similarly take some of your messaging that you have on your traditional landing page here, just again, all around the theme of not reinventing the wheel. your privacy policy, which is required. So link to your privacy policy, which I'm sure you already have on all of your current landing pages anyway, so you can quickly grab that and paste it in there. A custom privacy policy text. This is an optional field that a lot of advertisers are now using post-GDPR. Gives you the opportunity to create any additional custom language that your legal team requires in order to facilitate and or allow for data collection. We're just going to put that in there. And then once all of that is done, and I don't have the privacy policy in there yet, because that's why I'm not able to click through, but let's pretend that we're all good to go on this field. I'm just going to put in, sorry, let's just try to do this real quick. Actually, won't get to the next step. Now let's do this, linkedin.com. All right. So now you see that you're not able to get to the next field unless you fill out every single form, which is a great reminder to complete it all. Then you hit the next page, and this is where you select the different fields that you want to collect in terms of the data collection process. By default, a couple fields are checked, but you can uncheck them at any point in time. You can select up to 7 data points that you can collect. However, it's best practice to aim for 2 to 4, because less really is more. And once you select the different data fields you want to collect, you also have the option to add a custom question. An example for a custom question is a question like, what's your quarterly advertising budgets? If then you're able to filter the leads based on, size of price or something like that. We're not going to add a custom question for the purpose of this demo. I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that it's available. Then we hit next, and we get to the last step, which is the thank you message. So we're just going to say, the thank you message again, try to just rebuild with what you already have on your traditional landing pages in terms of what your thank you message looked like. And ultimately including a link to your website. Now, that can include the link to the asset, ungated, right? Because they've already given you your information that the people can access. So in the example of an ebook, you can create a link to the PDF file of the ebook or the actual just ebook where it lives on your site. Or if you want to have that sent to them via email, you can include that message in the thank you message and those instructions and simply include a link back to the website if you want to drive them back to your site to engage them further. Then you're going to select a thank you page call to action, which in the example of the ebook in most cases is going to be download now, specifically if you're including the ebook link as a thing. So then we're going to hit save. And now we can select next. This is the targeting screen. Again, very similar to what we saw on the earlier screen. We're going to skip this step as well. I'm going to go ahead and save that as a draft. But this is essentially how you're going to go ahead and create your campaign and create your lead gen forms in that same step. Now, you also have the option to, if you're not ready to create your campaign because A, you might not know what your audience parameters are, or you might not know, or you might not have your creative available yet, but you want to get started on that lead gen form, you can actually navigate to account assets and then navigate to lead gen forms and hit create new form template. And then you basically are going through the same steps that we just went through previously. Another thing I want to call out is here's the one that we just created. It's showing as inactive just because I didn't launch the campaign yet that I appended that inside that lead gen form to. Cool. So we'll go right back into it.
Great. Thanks, Roina, for walking us through how to set up a lead gen form. So now that you know how to set these up in Campaign Manager, let's just walk through really quickly some best practices. So to Roina's point, you can have 7 fields. I personally recommend 3 or less fields. When we ran a study actually a few months ago, we found that advertisers using 3 or less fields actually have a 60% higher form completion rate. If you put yourself in the prospect's shoes, right, you don't want to give too much information at once. So really ask for information that you really need, and then retarget those folks and get the rest of the information that you need. You can also create those custom questions. So we have 2 types of custom questions you can create. One is a free-form, so you can add anything you'd like. You can ask things like, if you're, for example, a luxury car dealership, you can say, if you want to sign up for, a ride around town, which dealership are you closest to? You can add that as a free form. You also have multiple choice here. So, you could ask a question and put up to 5 fields that they can select from. Two pieces of tips or two hot tips here. So one is the first question in the drop-down is actually pre-selected. So a lot of people, for example, may not go through the fields, so they just select one by default. So in order to prevent that, you can actually put select one or C drop-down as your first field to encourage folks to actually input accurate information. One other thing I want to call out, because I know we have folks from London, for example, and all throughout Europe, I know GDPR is a huge hot topic. So that opt-in button you see currently is only available for folks in EMEA. What that means is if you are in Europe and you see this lead gen form, you do have to opt in. So it's unchecked, but you have to check it in order to submit your information. Now, for places such as the US, where that's not necessarily required, we don't have that feature just yet. We're going to roll that out shortly, but you can actually use custom questions as a workaround. So you can ask in the multiple choice, do you agree to our privacy policy? And one answer is yes, one answer is no. And for folks who don't agree to it, you can obviously filter those leads out. So quick tip there. To preview your ad, unfortunately, Roy and I didn't have time to go through that, but all you do is go to the Ads tab, and you'll see the preview on the right side, and just click Next, and you'll be able to see both the form and the thank you page. There's an exciting new feature as well. So if you set up a direct integration, for example, you can now submit a lead within the preview and see if that lead went through to troubleshoot whether or not that integration is set up correctly. So that's actually hot off the press. That was released about a week ago. These are best practices in terms of creating the form, and you can actually apply these to not just lead gen forms, but actually sponsored content, sponsored in-mail, all of our ad formats. A few tips here is, like I mentioned, don't ask for too much information. Imagine you're on that first date. Put yourself in the shoes of your prospects and ask for information that you only need. And remember that stat that I just shared. If you ask for 3 fields or less, you actually get 60% higher form completion rates.
And I'll just touch on that. And there's actually a question in here, like, do you have a recommended number of form fields? So we ran a test with our lead gen forms, testing 3 fields versus 5. I think the 3 fields were like first name, company name, email address. And then 5 was like your title, and I forget the other one. And definitely we saw much more leads come through when we only had 3 fields. I understand, like, we get pressure from sales who wants like phone number, seniority, company size. So like, I understand sometimes there's a trade-off with marketing and sales where you just can't get around not having those extra fields. But we certainly saw much higher conversion rate when we restricted the fields to only 3.
That's a good point. I think it's also it's important to remember what kind of fields members typically have on their profile. So remember, these forms are pre-filled. So a lot of folks do have company name, for example, on their profile that will easily be populated. If you're asking for other things such as gender, for example, which we don't pre-populate, that's an extra step for the members. So your completion rate, it's likely that it'll be lower. Other things to remember, be super direct, be concise. Folks are, already committed at that point if they're looking through the form, and make sure the copy is relevant. So like Roina said, if you're promising a white paper in exchange for that information, make sure you actually link to that white paper in the thank you page, and make sure it's ungated so they're not signing up doubly and you don't get double lead information. And finally, this is something we've been preaching to the choir, but also A/B tests. So typically, we usually have 3 or 4 forms in rotation and see which ones perform best and optimize towards that. Great. So the beauty of lead gen forms is all of the lead data is actually just in Campaign Manager. So if you go to your campaigns tab in Campaign Manager, all you do is navigate towards the Leads tab, which you'll see, and you'll find information such as the number of leads, the completion rate, form opens, cost per lead, and total spent. So you don't actually have to enable conversion tracking or track on your own on the back end, what results you're actually getting. It's all within Campaign Manager. You can also download a report of these, which is really easy, and always attribute back to a form. This is just a quick example. You'll see leads in the drop-down itself, so you can actually see a visual graph of it as well. One other thing, so going along the lines of A/B testing, for some, I always get this question, should I use a lead gen for campaign or should I use a standard campaign? My answer is always test it out. I've actually seen some customers where standard campaigns work perfectly fine, whereas others, the lead gen form really works wonders for their campaigns. So what you can do within an account is set up a standard campaign. And again, the tracking and the reporting is all within Campaign Manager, so you don't have to set anything up. And set up a standard sponsored content campaign and enable conversion tracking. And then within the Campaign Manager itself, you'll actually see the cost per lead and the cost per conversion right in there. Great, and finally, you're thinking, wow, I generated all these leads, I've got my CPL, how do I access my leads? So there are two ways to access your leads. The first is just go into Campaign Manager and you can directly download them as a CSV file. And you'll see the standard rows such as created time, created date, the campaign ID, the account ID, and then the information that you've asked for. Alternatively, you can actually set up a direct integration with your CRM or marketing automation. So these are the partners we have today. In terms of direct integrations, we have Microsoft Dynamics, Eloqua, Marketo, and Salesforce Sales Cloud. If you're using something different, so for example, you're using HubSpot, maybe you're using Salesforce Marketing Cloud, even though we don't offer those direct integrations, you can actually use third-party bridges. So DriftRock and Zapier actually build the bridge between our LinkedIn Campaign Manager and whatever your system may be. So I know a lot of marketers, especially in education, for example, or finance, have homegrown CRMs or homegrown marketing automation. These are great ways to actually set up a direct integration, and these companies at a really low cost will build that for you. Okay, Cass, do we have time for a poll question?
Yeah, we can do a poll question real quick, and then we will kick off into the next. We'll do a couple Q&A too.
Okay, cool. Great. So as lead gen marketers, we're just curious to know which metrics do you use to optimize your lead gen campaigns? And there's no right or wrong answer. Everyone has a different metric or KPI they're going after.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, I think for me as a lead gen marketer, definitely using all of them and with a different sort of lens. Volume of leads is always important because the second that drops, I have someone from sales knocking on my door asking where their leads are. So keeping sales happy with the volume of leads is important, but also making sure I'm not paying too much for those leads. A lot of times if you could pay more than what your annual lifetime value of a customer. So optimizing for that. And then of course the form completion rate, which I kind of really think is the most important for campaign optimization, isolating which ones are driving the highest completion rate versus the lowest and optimizing towards the highest. So yeah, it looks like a lot of people, all of the above. Some people think leads, most important, cost per lead. Yep. Okay.
Great.
So questions, and we have so many questions today, so I apologize. We will not get to everybody's, and we are running a little tight on time, and we want to make sure we give enough time for measurement and optimization. So a couple questions. One, I know this is always a big one. Lead gen forms automatically pull in the email associated with the LinkedIn account, and it's not their work email. And a lot of lead gen marketers, B2B lead gen marketers, want the work email. Yeah. So what's your recommendation?
So there's two ways to go about this. Number one, you can specifically check the field that asks for work email instead of email. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that it still will pull in whatever email they have on their LinkedIn profile, which in most cases tends to be the personal email. So if that doesn't work for you and if you don't see the quality of leads improving, another thing you can do is to create a custom question and just ask them directly, what's your email address, and have them manually fill it in, or what's your work email address specifically. And that can help really increase the volume of the quality of the leads.
Okay. Let's see, what are some other, I want to focus specifically on lead gen questions. So let me just, So what are some ways that you can increase your conversion on lead forms? I think we talked a little bit about best practices. I personally would recommend A/B testing your form fields. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so I think just A/B testing, like the number of fields or data that you're collecting, this can be a great way to really just kind of drive home a point that you're trying to make to maybe your manager, right? Who's like, we need all these forms, but if you are able to provide data points that actually show that by you dropping 1 or 2 fields, you're increasing your completion rates significantly, then that might be it, right? Similarly, you can also look at your creative and understand a little bit more around what type of messaging works best to drive the highest conversion rate on the actual like form that you're subsequently sending them to.
Yeah, and I would just say is always make sure your content is aligning well with the audience. Yeah. Make sure that like the audience you're targeting wants to actually download that content, and put yourself in their shoes.
You can also A/B test. I mentioned this previously. We have LinkedIn autofill. So enable autofill on your landing pages and then set up a lead gen form campaign and see which one performs better. So like we keep mentioning, I mean, there are really creative ways to A/B test different types of campaigns, all with the same end goal, which is getting you accurate lead information.
All right, I'll take one question because it's been up here for a while and I feel bad not getting to it, and then we'll get into measurement and optimizations. So Anthony is getting a lot of impressions, but not conversions. He's not quite getting the type of conversions or the amount of conversions he's looking for, and his content is an ebook. Any just kind of feedback on things he can do to optimize for conversions?
Yeah. So first of all, Anthony, I would like to look at your click demographics and your conversion demographics to understand who the audiences are that are ultimately converting and then optimize your campaigns from there. So for instance, if you see that certain seniorities or certain functions are over-indexing on the conversion side, those are the ones that you want to hone in on refining your targeting. The other thing is, again, I know we keep hammering on this, but the importance of content, right? Maybe your audience is good, but maybe your content is not speaking directly to them. So try to make very small tweaks. Again, don't try to create a whole new ad because we know resources are tight and it's sometimes just not realistic. Instead, try to like A/B test something like in the introduction text, speak directly to your audience in a way, or try to pose an engaging question. That can always help as well.
I always like to call out A/B testing headlines is so easy. I mean, it's just tweaking like a few words, and you would be shocked at like how much drastic increase in performance you can drive when you just tweak like the format of your headline. It really works. And then your landing page. That's the other thing that comes to mind. We're going to talk about this a little bit in the measurement section, but making sure that your landing page is optimized for mobile, making sure it aligns well to the message in your ad. Consistency is always key from that call to action to when they land on the landing page.
I think in summary, that's exactly right. It's the targeting, that's the bread and butter, making sure you're targeting the right folks. Then take a look at the content itself. There are things in the back end that LinkedIn can help with. So for example, we can now auto-optimize towards leads on the targeting page. So if you check that box, we'll actually serve your lead gen form campaigns to folks who are more prone to submitting their information at the bid that you want. So we'll auto-optimize everything on the back end to make sure you're getting the results you want. But to Cass and Royna's point, always make sure that the basics are right first.
Okay, now we'll kick it off to Royna, right? Okay.
Awesome. So highly anticipated the section about measurement and optimizations. And I know a lot of the questions we've had today were focused on how to best tweak your campaigns. So hopefully we'll be able to give you some answers as it pertains to that. So you can dive right into LinkedIn Campaign Manager and leverage all the tools available to you to drive higher ROI. So let's talk a little bit about what we have available to you to really set you up for success. So when you log into LinkedIn's Campaign Manager, there's a wide array of tools that are available to you. And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. So we're really going to dissect one at a time to walk you through the benefits of each and really helping you understand how you can best use them. So our campaign insights. So when you do log into the Campaign Manager, you immediately see the initial campaign insights, and we'll dive into each of these in the respective sections. But just to give you a sneak peek, these are initial insights in terms of impressions, click-through rate, engagement rates, etc., that are at your disposal and that you can use as a quick lever to optimize your campaigns. Campaign and website demographics is another great tool available to you. On the campaign demographics side, and I know we covered this quite a bit today, it's a great way for you to just go into any given campaign and understand what the audiences that are most likely or most engaging with your ads and optimize your targeting based on that. Similarly, you can use our website demographics if you install our Insight tag to learn more about the audiences coming to your site in the first place. And lastly, conversion tracking, also just available by placing our Insight tag and the ability to really define what a conversion means to you. It doesn't always have to be a download or someone submitting their information to you. You can also create different action points, such as people viewing specific pages that you want to drive them to for an initiative to showcase that your efforts have driven lots of engagement that ultimately did lead to a lead being collected. So let's dive into campaign insights. So this is a quick screenshot that you'll see on the left side around the insights that are available to you in our campaign manager interface. These are the standard metrics that are familiar to, such as impressions, clicks, click-through rate, social actions, which if you export the report, you'll get a breakout of how many likes, comments, shares, etc. you had, overall spend, cost per click, and also the engagement rate, which takes into account your clicks in addition to your social actions and backs it into your impressions. Campaign demographics, again, this is a great kind of screenshot here showing you where the majority of the clicks and or conversions are coming from. This is a great way for you to just dig right in and understand how you can refine your targeting. So specifically around the point made earlier, if you started targeting a little bit broader, this is your way to go in and refine your targeting based on actual campaign insights and not just assumptions. The other important thing is that you're able to break out these demographics based on a wide array of filters, such as company name, industry, job function, seniority, geo, or company size. So again, lots of layers that you can play with to really help refine your targeting based on actual campaign performance. Website demographics. This can be really valuable in many ways. So once you place our tag, as I mentioned before, you're able to learn more about the audiences coming to your site based on LinkedIn first-party data. Why is that important to you? A, it can help you validate some of your own assumptions in terms of who you think you should be targeting in the first place based on who's coming to your site already. B, it can also validate some of your paid media efforts across channels. One thing that I often tell my clients that I work with is to set up a website demographic segment that's looking at the audience demographics of paid media pages across different channels. And what that helps them understand is, are all the channels that I'm using driving the right people to my site? Or is there a gap between one channel from the other that I can then optimize? So you see how LinkedIn's tools really help you go beyond just LinkedIn performance and help you assess and measure your ROI more holistically. Conversion tracking, great way to track conversions directly natively in Campaign Manager. The differentiator here being that you're able to track both post-view and post-click conversions and directly make optimizations based on the metrics that matter most to you, in this case, conversions.
Questions. We have no shortage of questions. Okay. So one of the top questions right now, not specifically to measurement, but if you're running two different ads that target the same audience in the same location, do the ads compete with each other? I think there's two ways you can answer it, like within the ad unit, and then Jessica's example was like sponsored content and sponsored in-mail.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the actual, like you're running a sponsored content campaign and you're running multiple ads. So general best practice that we recommend is to run between 3 to 4 ads in any given campaign for sponsored content. The reason being is that this helps you maximize your exposure against their frequency caps, which will serve up to 4 unique, and that's the key, unique posts to your audience every 48 hours. So by using less than that, you already are limiting your own chances of increasing your reach and frequency. So that's one key important takeaway there. The other thing to note as far as understanding what ad performs better in this scenario is when you set up a campaign, you have an option to select to have the ads deliver evenly and then make that determination based on what performs better directly yourself. Or you can check the box that says auto-optimize towards the highest performing ad. What that means is that the ad that's driving the highest amount of clicks will automatically be served more in front of your targets than the ones that have seen fewer clicks.
To answer your question about the sponsored in-mail and sponsored content, no, they will not compete against each other because they're completely different products. So even though they're in the same marketplace, they're actually on different auction dynamics. So if you have SEM InMail or SEM Dynamic Ads, don't worry about it. They won't compete against each other.
Yeah, and always think about all of our products to complement each other and not necessarily compete again. Just because they run on different platforms, some are desktop only, some are mobile and desktop, and just by sheer nature of that, you really have an opportunity to capitalize on your audience and really reach them through different avenues.
So because we just touched on frequency caps, it's perfect lead in for Pablo's question. For InMail, there's a 45-day frequency cap. We discussed that in the beginning, but how about for other ads? He referenced lead gen ads, which I'm assuming means sponsored content ads. Can you just reiterate what
Yeah, absolutely. We can quickly reiterate. So the frequency cap for sponsored content is up to 4 unique posts every 48 hours by advertiser. And advertiser is defined on the company page or showcase page level. So for those of you who might have a company page and subsequent showcase pages, that's the differentiator there.
That's all the questions we'll take for now. We will stay over past half hour to answer some questions for those of you who want to stick around, but we want to make sure we finish the content. So yeah.
Cool. So in the next section, we're going to be taking a deep dive on conversion tracking and including a demo to walk you through conversion tracking in great detail. So before we dive into conversion tracking, I quickly want to reiterate why it's important to be using conversion tracking and specifically LinkedIn's conversion tracking. You know how many times I talk to marketers and they're like, well, I'm using my own tracking, I'm using UTM codes or whatever else, and I don't need to send another request to my ops team to place yet another piece of code. And then oftentimes I tell them, well, you should, and here's really why. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. And one of the main benefits is just more visibility, ultimately, into your total performance. Because otherwise, if you're running a lead generation campaign and you're not able to see leads collected, you're really not looking at the full picture. And so this is really important for you to keep in mind. You also are able to then capture post-view conversions. This is incredibly important if you're running campaigns across multiple channels and potentially are leveraging retargeting through a different partner, because otherwise you're not going to be able to see the influence that LinkedIn is driving through a view-through conversions. Again, a view-through conversion is someone viewing an ad, being influenced by it, and then being tracked as converting after the fact. You also are able to unlock advanced features for stronger ROI. If you do enable our Inside Tag, you get conversion tracking, and with that, you have the option to check the box that allows you to auto-optimize your campaigns to conversions. What that helps you do is take out some of the guesswork, make things a little bit more automated, and ultimately help you reduce your CPAs. And some of the initial testing that we've done based on the data gathered of marketers that are enabling it versus not enabling it, we see a 13% reduction in CPA. So again, all the more reason to enable it. You also, as mentioned before, through placing our tag, also have the ability to not just track conversions, but also run retargeting and garner very valuable website demographics. And last, this goes without saying, just having a deeper insight into optimizing your campaigns and greater visibility into performance as a whole.
Yeah, Roy, I think that's a good point. I always get questions from marketers asking, like, why should I use conversion tracking? I already have Google Analytics enabled, right? It's actually not a and or. It's actually use both, right? So there are a lot of insights that you can get from our native conversion tracking that you won't be able to necessarily pick up with Google Analytics. So I would always encourage our marketers to enable all analytics, analytical tools, and use them in conjunction with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to the initial first stat that we first saw around ROI being one of the biggest challenges, this is where we can help you prove that ROI, right? So we'll provide you with the more data you have, the more things you have at your disposal to really tell a story around whether a campaign performed or not, and whether when it didn't, why it didn't perform. So I also wanted to quickly walk you through conversion tracking versus lead gen forms. The reason being is that when you're running a lead gen form campaigns, you already are getting all the leads directly into Campaign Manager, which then you might think, well, why do I need conversion tracking, or when should I use one? This table does a great job at outlining in which scenarios to use which one. I think the kind of key takeaway really here is if you're interested in getting additional information around the demographics of your leads that you're generating, this is where you want to add conversion tracking. You also want to think about if you are trying to track multiple conversion events and not just the one that you're promoting in your lead gen form, another avenue to be considering are conversion tracking. Do we have time for this poll, Cass, or should we just...
Let's skip ahead. Sorry,
Okay.
guys. I want to make sure you guys get the rest of the conversion tracking content.
Cool. So I'm going to pass it over to Candace, who's going to be talking about conversion tracking features.
Great. So to Royna's point, we released this a couple years ago, but we're continually improving conversion tracking. And I just wanted to share 3 new updates for folks who have already enabled it or thinking about enabling conversion tracking. So the first is, I'm so excited about this, we have auto optimization. So what that means is on the bid and budget page, you can actually optimize towards website visits or website conversions. So what that means is once you put your bid in, we'll auto adjust it either higher or lower so that you can win in the auction and actually win towards those conversions. Now, a lot of marketers are like, well, I don't want LinkedIn to bid increase my bid by that much more. Well, we are increasing it, but the good news with this is we're actually showing your ads to folks who are more likely to engage and convert. So while your your bids may go up a little higher, the engagement will be higher, and as a result, your CPLs will be lower. This is also hot off the press. We're also going to shortly release auto bidding. So that means you don't even have to put in a bid. We'll actually automatically make that bid for you based on your objectives. So that's coming, I think, towards the end of the month. So look out for that. This isn't as sexy, but this is really cool for marketers. You can actually apply multiple conversions to a campaign. So historically, you were only able to apply one. It was quite manual, but we heard you as marketers. You guys, we understand time is money. So now you can actually do this on the back end. And finally, last new feature, we actually introduced a new troubleshooting feature. So now when you go into account assets and click on conversion tracking, you can actually see if your conversions are firing and working properly. So one quick tip is, go to the landing page where you set up that conversion, visit it, exit it, go back into Campaign Manager, and see if the last activity was 2-3 minutes ago. That will indicate to you whether or not your conversions are working properly and actually on time. Also, one quick tip I always get, is there a lag? It's almost in real time. So once you visit that website, you should see that pretty shortly. Great. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Royna, who will give a quick demo and introduction on how to set this up.
Thanks, Candace. All right, so we're going to be talking through the conversion tracking setup and also walk you through the 2 different types of tags that you can extract on LinkedIn's Campaign Manager. So first of all, there's 2 different ways that you can track through our insight tag. There's a standard JavaScript code that ideally, in a perfect world, we would want you to put into a global footer across all of your pages. The way that tag works is it's URL based. So you basically are telling the system by setting up a conversion based on a URL string when to fire. So for instance, you can do match strings such as starts with, contains, or exact. So if you want to capture conversions across all of your thank you pages and all of your thank you pages contain the word thank you, you can create a conversion that says contains thank you across certain domain, and then our tag will automatically fire based on that URL logic. In cases where that does not necessarily apply, so the URL logic might be a little bit more difficult, or you have limitations as it pertains to setting up the pixel across all pages, you can also opt into getting our image pixel. Our standard JavaScript code actually at the end of it has the image pixel already embedded in it. So our tool will be able to differentiate and extract that image pixel directly for you. So you can place it on things like a button or certain activities that you want to track on any given site. So I want to walk you through a couple of best practices for the image pixel specifically. The reason being is that I spend a lot of my time troubleshooting whenever image pixels are used, because there's some cases in which they're not applied correctly. And so general use case, if you're not sure, do I need an image pixel or do I need a JavaScript code? Really the answer is, if you don't have any URL logic to apply, you have to resort to an image pixel. Here's a quick example. Let's say someone converts on your ebook and then hits submit after they submit their information on your website, and then the URL doesn't change and they automatically get the ebook. In those scenarios, you have to use an image pixel because the URL logic would not apply. Similarly, if you are driving them ultimately to a PDF, which we all know you can't really tag, you have to use an image pixel that you place on the button, and that will basically tell the image pixel to only track when someone clicks that button on a completed form. The important thing is, again, just use one tag at a time. If you're trying to do too many things at once, our system will not work, and you're not going to be able to see conversions being tracked appropriately. All right, so let's dive into a quick demo walking you through how to create a conversion. All right, so we're back in the original screen. I'm just going to navigate to the main screen again. So the way it works is once you are in your Campaign Manager interface, you're going to go ahead and click on Insight Tag. If you do not see this option available, you will have to go into Conversion Tracking and then navigate to Create New Tag. The reason why you might not see Insight Tag readily available is because the tag hasn't been created yet into your account. But again, super easy. Once you click Conversion Tracking, you'll get right to that. So you've already gone through this step. You already have a tag loaded onto your account. That's when you'll go ahead and navigate to Conversion Tracking. And we'll click Create New Conversion. We'll give the conversion a name. We're going to call it ebook download. A conversion type, we're going to assign this in this scenario to be a download because that is what it is. A value, this is an optional field that allows you to really help from an optimization standpoint and also provides you clarity as it pertains to your KPIs. Oftentimes when I work with marketers, they talk to me about, I want to generate leads for a campaign. But when I ask them what their ultimate goals are, how much that lead is worth to them, they draw a blank. And so this really helps you to kind of take a step back and really understand how much you're willing to pay for a lead. And it also provides a benchmark when you're trying to optimize your campaigns. The conversion window, and this is again why it's so great to be using our tag, is you can customize the conversion window. So the windows of time that our tag will track certain conversion events. For click-based conversions, which again means someone clicks through the ad and directly converts, you're able to adjust it based on these windows. So if you just want to have people be tracked who have done that in the last 7 days, then you can tell the system to do that. View through conversions, someone just viewing the ad, and then later on being tracked as a conversion on your site can also be adjusted based on the different parameters. This is actually a feature we rolled out somewhat recently because we've gotten a lot of requests from marketers who wanted to tweak and customize it based on their own custom conversion windows that they're looking at when they're running campaigns. This is important. So once you're in the process, there's actually a button that allows you to select the campaigns that you want to associate the conversion to. If you don't do this, you're not going to track any conversions. So you want to make sure that you select the campaigns that you want to track that particular conversion to. And then these are the two differentiators we just talked about. The option for site-wide Insight Tag, which is ideally recommended and in most cases the easiest to troubleshoot. And then the event-specific pixel, which again, you're only going to use if the URL doesn't change when someone converts and or you have very specific limitations from your tech teams that say we only allow image pixels and not JavaScript. And then lastly, in the scenario of the traditional JavaScript code, because it's all URL-based, you're just going to give them the logic that you want to apply for tracking those conversions, whether it's a starts with or a contains, and then you hit save, and you're good to go. Cool. So I also want to talk a little bit more about campaign demographic reporting as it pertains to measuring your leads. We talked about this a couple times, but again, I know you guys are always interested in trying to understand how to optimize your campaigns and how to make them more successful. Looking at the campaign demographics tab and really honing in on the different demographic filters and understanding who's clicking and converting can be your best first step at doing that. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah,
or?
So we do have another section around conversion tracking best practices. We're going to skip that sections because we have so many questions that we want to make sure that we can answer them and do our due diligence for you guys on the line today. So you can download that deck on the left-hand side of your screen and review those conversion tracking best practices. But we will take a few minutes for questions, and then we are also going to announce our winners soon. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let me get to questions. Okay, this is a question around sponsored InMails. So this is from Eric. He often gets recruiter InMails. How can marketers beat them to the punch, and how does LinkedIn give priority? It's a very good question.
So that's actually a great question and some differentiator we should have probably pointed out at that section. So sponsored email is completely different from the recruiter emails that you get. The best way to differentiate the two is to think about the recruiter emails that you get as a one-to-one conversation, right? The recruiter reaches out directly to you, wants to ideally engage you to attract you for a position. The sponsored email message is more effective because it's a one-to-many. Even though you're able to personalize, you're sending it to a lot of different people based on the targeting attributes you're selecting. And just by sheer nature of that, and Candace, you can chime in, I imagine that there is not a competition aspect of any sort.
Yeah, from a auction pricing standpoint, there is no competition at all. So sponsored email, to Roina's point, is one-to-one messaging. So they have recruiters have a different pricing model. Whereas for us in marketing, it's completely different. So you're only competing with other marketers to win in the action, not actually recruiters.
Okay, so this one I know is a bit of $1 million question as well, but what is your best recommendation on a monthly budget for LinkedIn?
Ooh.
I mean, from a sales perspective, I'd say $1 million. But no, let's jokes aside. That's a really tough one to answer, because I think the best way I would advise on this is back it into what your expectations are for cost per lead and what your assumptions are based on your average completion or click-through conversion rate, and then back it into that, because then you're really making a more informed decision around your budget that's backed into your required outcome versus just saying, I'm going to spend $500 or $1,000, right, and see what that gets me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you know about what your average conversion rates are and your average click-through rates, use those numbers to kind of back into what you think, and your average cost per click, of course, and what you think you should spend. Okay. Another popular question, when you create sponsored content and promote that content, are you able to go back and change the URLs, or do you need to create a brand new ad? I know this is...
So this is something, it's so trivial, but it gets me so excited because for so many years I've had to tell my clients, I'm so sorry, you have to recreate the ad. We cannot yet edit stuff and all of that, and it was just a pain. And we finally released it a few months ago, I believe, the editing function for a feature for any kind of posts, whether those are posts that you're sponsoring from your company page and or direct sponsored posts that you're directly sending to those members.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions and then we will announce winners, and we will also follow up with the winners via email. So Nicole asks, I know this is also a very popular question when it comes to website demographics. Is it possible to exclude companies from the Insight tag and your website demographics because, for example, people from my company are skewing our website data? I've heard this question before.
So you can exclude conversions, but this is actually touching on two different things. It's conversions and then also matched audiences. So like I said, for matched audiences, you can exclude folks already by contact lists or by account lists, etc. And then from conversions, you can actually set up logic where you can exclude certain conversions for that campaign.
I think she might be referring to website demographics, and I think the answer is no, not right now.
Because we don't report on company names.
Yeah.
No, currently not at the
challenge is.
I actually have personally given this feedback to products, so I know it's on their horizon. So keep an eye out. I don't think it's on the roadmap yet, but it's definitely a known ask from customers. So. Are carousel ads only available as a paid option?
Yes, currently it is only a paid option under the sponsored content family.
Okay, with that is all the time we have today. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Apologize for everybody who didn't get their questions answered, but we will follow up with resources that will direct you to your questions in our follow-up email. But now I want to take time to announce our winners, because it's always my favorite part.
Drum roll.
First place, our first most engaged is Eric S. Our second place winner is Alex H. And our third place winner is Maricel. I hope I got that right. Keep an eye out in your inbox. Either myself or my colleague Renee will be following up with you to send you your video package. Again, thank you everybody for attending today. We know 2 hours is a long time to sit with us, but we've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out for an email in your inbox.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.